Countless games have tried and failed to challenge players' focus, nerve, and tactics in a way that genuinely pushes their mind to its limits. However, on occasion a game comes along that strips away the comforts we're used to as gamers to create a raw, punishing, and relentless experience that demands you confront your own instincts under pressure by adapting to constantly shifting threats. Welcome. My name is Toprak Tosin. I'm a professional user experience designer, and on this episode of UX in Games, we look at one of the most intense and compelling user experiences in gaming. One I think absolutely nobody should miss out on. Hunt Showdown 1896. Every match in Hunt starts before you even set foot in the world. Your loadout isn't just a choice, it's a commitment. The right tools can mean the difference between success and failure, and traits like Bullet Grubber or Necromancer fundamentally alter how you approach engagements, because Hunt isn't just about skill, it's about preparation. Each loadout choice reflects a player's unique strengths and playstyle. Whether you prefer long-range precision or close-quarters battle, your gear becomes an extension of yourself and reflects how we as humans tend to set comfort thresholds based off knowledge of our abilities and the preferences that come with them. This is what Hunt does incredibly well. Every tool, trait, and weapon in your arsenal is part of a larger strategy. One that balances personal playstyle with environmental challenges, right down to the ability to manually adjust your hunter's health segments. One of the most unique features in the game, the health respec mechanic allows you as a user to manually prioritize either the ability to regenerate more health per segment or avoid permanently losing a larger segment in the event that you're downed or burned for too long. And when paired with traits like Mithridatus or Resilience, it isn't just about healing or longevity, it's about foresight. This mechanic forces players into a strategic mindset, calculating from the very outset when they might need to heal and how much damage can be taken without having to expend resources to do so. And as a result, plays into how well we'll be able to calculate risk and resource management under duress later. Hunt creates an experience that forces players to make tough decisions that are only made tougher by the fact that each bounty has weaknesses to specific weaponry. The Butcher is weak to shotguns and bleeding items. The Spider is weak to fire as well as blunt damage, while the Assassin and Scrapbeak are weak to poison. However, their behavior is such that they engage at a very close distance, so while a sniper might be ideal for dealing with other players or harder monsters, it's not going to do you much good against these guys, so your goals matter as well. But this goes deeper than tactics. Because of the remarkable balance of the game, it's able to give players like you and me an enormous amount of freedom and agency in how we want to play. If you want, you can show up with literally nothing, and provided you're good enough, you can do well. It provides opportunities for us to exercise autonomy through freedom of choice, competence through the application of knowledge used to control outcomes, and relatedness by offering you the ability to fill in the skill or capability gaps between you and your partner. These three things tie into what's called self-determination theory, a theory of human motivation that states we as humans and players derive satisfaction from being in control of our own life, effectively controlling outcomes, and being able to connect with others. And this is a very compelling thing for humans. Mastering preparation generally creates a deeper satisfaction in us. We take on rituals in our daily lives, and especially sports, because of it. In Hunt, this means knowing you've tailored your equipment perfectly to the situation actively gives you a psychological edge over the competition, much like mastering any skill in the real world. Which is why the latest menu interface has resulted in the game getting review bombed with absolutely valid criticism. Big, sweeping interface changes are often a bitter pill for users to swallow, because it disrupts their established mental models. In this case, Crytek prioritized bolstering the console player base to the chagrin of their PC users, despite the fact that PC users are, or were, the game's primary market. They seem to have made everything bigger, which means certain layers or focal points that were previously accessible in the form of modals or pop-ups, such as weapon or tool selection, have now been moved onto their own screens to make them more usable for controllers. This has slowed down the rate at which PC users can move through the interface, because they tend to prefer flexibility and access enabled by smaller targets that demand more precise control but take up less space. They have that capability with a mouse. Now don't get me wrong, I appreciate what they're trying to do with the UI. I play exclusively on console, and the prior interface was predominantly navigated by a cursor mapped to the analog stick. It was absolutely unbearable, and now instead it's clean, easily navigable, and gets across key information in a concise manner. Plus, the introduction and thorough integration of shortcuts is a huge boon. But in a game where preparation is key, the bar that needs to be set in order to make changes like this is way beyond what most designers would expect. And the lack of awareness of this has resulted in an inexcusable amount of bugs in the new UI, especially for an active product that has been on the market for some time. This may be completely off base, but I see signs that Crytek may have been forced to push out this UI in time for the 1896 update, purely using data and best practices before it was thoroughly tested and ready. By mentioning this, I harbor no ill will towards Crytek. This is a common situation for UX designers and software developers under time constraints all over the world in countless organizations. However, it is one that typically results in many bugs that consequently mean UX changes and adoption of these changes are met with exponentially more resistance by users, because they can't effectively and efficiently update their mental models. The data-driven nature of current UX best practices means it can be very easy, sometimes too easy, to claim it'll be fine once we iron out all the bugs and dismiss the people that complain about these changes or new features as people that just don't like change. And that can be dangerous because while data is an incredibly useful tool, data is also very rarely objective, despite being perceived as such. And often the quality of the data or our interpretation of the data can be where we go wrong. And in the event that data-driven decisions result in a reaction like this, it's important to go back to the drawing board and listen to your user base. In this case, it's those that have been using your product for much longer than the new audience, the console market. And that's because they really understand the intricacies of it after years of using it. Give them the right amount of respect for their preferences and feedback, and play the human angle. I find they often give you insights that you may have missed when processing the data that led to the decisions that got you here. It's why in my day job I always encourage thorough testing and retesting with actual active users. As a matter of fact, there's a lot to talk about with regard to this UI, so in lieu of a thorough breakdown that could easily make this video too long, I'd like to take this opportunity to let you know I will be coming back to it in a new series that I'm going to call Patterns in Play, focused on dissecting specific patterns across multiple video games, and how these patterns influence your experience cross-contextually. You can expect these to be more technical, exploring the finer details of how UX and UI work together, and how established mental models that we carry from game to game can influence our behavior and interpretation of certain features. Hunt will form a large part of one of these videos on menus, because there's a lot to look at here, from the general navigation to the finer details like managing access to weapon variants or skins. But to go back to the matter at hand, Hunt is more than an interface, and while fixing their interface issues might allow you to kit yourself out perfectly with minimal stress, your odds of survival rise dramatically once paired with another. Our connection to others is a primary motivational force which is twisted by the world of Hunt Showdown. The often fragile foundations of trust which human relationships are built on can be broken in an instant, and although the need to work together creates a strong bond of trust between teammates, in Hunt that bond is constantly tested by the desire to survive. Having a partner, in most games, gives you a sense of safety or overwhelming firepower. Consider the recent Space Marine 2, or another more dated game with excellent co-op mechanics, Splinter Cell Conviction. Having another player by your side for the most part makes you stronger. At least, that's what we're used to. Here, however, instead of numbers being a strength, Hunt flips that idea on its head in a unique and very nuanced way. Instead of a universal sense of empowerment, you feel more exposed. Yes, while you objectively have more firepower, can carry more tools, and can cover a wider spectrum in terms of capabilities across different scenarios, as a duo or trio, you're also a larger presence in the world, and so command more attention from it. That word matters here, presence. In this hostile world, your presence can be an enormous disadvantage. And so, a partner really becomes a double-edged sword. When every move can send you on a path towards either life or death, the stakes between you and your teammate are heightened. Cooperation isn't just a feature, it's a necessity which can lead to success or catastrophic failure. And more impressively, Hunt forces chemistry between you and your teammate in spite of the fact that you may not know or even like them, by leaning into concepts like reciprocity and altruism. In psychology, and in lockstep with our self-preservation instincts, we know that in moments of fear and stress we may act selfishly, and depending on what we choose to do in the end, this can either bring people together or tear them apart. Thomas Hobbes, in his book Leviathan, describes this as the state of nature, characterized by chaos, fear, and perpetual conflict as individuals act purely in their self-interest. Now, you may agree or disagree with the natural state of things being one of chaos, fear, and conflict, but the counterbalance Hobbes proposes to this state of nature is that rational individuals seek to escape it by entering into a social contract. The social contract is a topic that's hotly debated, but for the most part, it can be boiled down to an agreement among individuals to give up certain freedoms or self-interests in exchange for protection and social order, whether that come from submitting to a sovereign being, forming a collective will of the people, or simply agreeing on a set of rational, ethical principles. Hunt presents threats abundant and ever-present enough that the game is able to give us an experience which makes plain why people help or abandon others in survival scenarios, by asking us all a few very important questions. What do we learn about ourselves when survival is on the line? How do we act when the safety of others conflicts with or is essential to our own need for security? But most importantly, will you honor the social contract when the game presents situations where selfishness could benefit you or your teammate? While this might be a more philosophical take, the different ways in which the social contract can play out in practice ties into a more common UX principle: emergent storytelling, a term used to describe a story not designed by the developers, but constructed by the player through their interactions with the game world and those around them. I cover this briefly in the Helldivers 2 video, where I discussed the desire to work cooperatively in pursuit of cool stories to tell. On multiple occasions playing through Hunt, I found myself in situations where trust between myself and my teammate either saved the day or led to ruin. One occasion in particular comes to mind, where because I knew what my partner was capable of and vice versa, we could prioritize different enemies and take them down simultaneously, despite being on a bit of a back foot. Through unpredictable human behavior, where alliances can either be your greatest strength or your greatest downfall, team-based play forces players to rely on each other, and here the possibility of betrayal adds an extra layer of tension and depth to the user experience. So far we've covered the experience of preparation and the impact of presence. But Hunt is still a first-person shooter, which means even if you've prepared as well as possible and have good chemistry with your teammate, the lack of one thing can potentially spell the end of your hunt.
Get your gun, get your knife, lace your boot. We ain't fighting alone.
At the heart of every great challenge is the desire for mastery. Generally, in most games, mastery doesn't come easily, but here in Hunt Showdown, it's truly earned through focus, practice, and the ability to remain calm and collected under pressure. There's a constant balancing act in Hunt that makes you feel like you're always barely surviving by the skin of your teeth, because you're always under stress. Hunt keeps your mind active by constantly asking questions like, do you fight or flee when you hear footsteps? Do you trust your instincts or take the time to think it through? These are questions you must be prepared to answer at a moment's notice, because every choice has consequences. Under pressure, our brains struggle to process information efficiently. Yet here, players are forced to make complex decisions in the face of extreme stress, not just quickly, but constantly with little to no room to breathe. It's not just about reflexes or the ability to think on your toes. It's about timing, practice, preparation, and say it with me this time, cognitive load. For example, we as humans have gotten very good at motor learning and reflexive action. Using repeated behaviors under stress becomes second nature to us after we've done it enough times, and that eases our cognitive load. In Hunt, they flip this on its head by making simple, reflexive actions much more burdensome. Let's look at reloads, for example. You might have noticed this if you've played Helldivers 2 recently or watched my video, but as a result of playing most first-person shooters, or any shooter for that matter, our brains are wired to immediately nail that square, X, or R key the moment we've eliminated a threat. In Hunt, however, reloads aren't just mechanical, they're tactical. Because of the limited ammunition you have access to, a slow fire rate, and long reload animations, a well-timed reload can mean the difference between life and death. This is elevated by traits like bullet grubber, which allow you to top up your weapon without sacrificing ammunition, and can really turn the tide of engagements. Not to mention, it completely changes your reload animation, which is phenomenal attention to detail. Little things like this deeply influence the pacing and rhythm of combat, and mitigate or accentuate the tension of each engagement, giving us more decisions to make on the fly. This is something that you most likely already feel the impact of, as the more decisions we make, the more mentally exhausted we become. And with exhaustion comes mistakes. In Hunt, every encounter feels like a gamble. The game's risk-reward dynamics mean that you're always one step away from death or victory, and in an instant, a well-placed shot can turn a losing situation on its head. But the inverse is also true. One bullet missed can cost you everything. And I mean everything. Permadeath in games influences the player's relationship with risk. It challenges the typical respawn and retry mentality of modern games, and gives real emotional weight to your decisions. It's something we've seen in games like DayZ, Escape from Tarkov, and now in Hunt, but on a deeper human level, it serves as a mirror held to our real-life survival instincts, where every decision has irreversible consequences. So what happens when this primal drive sits at the heart of the game? How do we respond when every decision could mean life or death? And what does this tell us about fear, trust, and the human desire for control? Well, fear is a constant companion on the hunt, and at its peak, our desire for control can cause us to enter a flow state. In his book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes flow as the feeling of being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away, time flies, and every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved, and you're using your skills to the utmost. This ability to consistently get you as a player into the flow state is a delicate and masterfully handled balancing act between decision-making under stress and mastery that the folks at Crytek have been able to absolutely nail here by leaning into the need for focus and precision, which truly elevates Hunt above its peers. The narrow first-person camera limits peripheral vision, forcing players to focus their attention sharply. The different ready states available in the game, low ready, hip aiming, and aim down sights, force you to decide if you'd rather prioritize surveying the environment or pulling the trigger at a moment's notice. And the need to switch between normal vision and dark sight, which limits your range of visibility, means you need to decide if you're hunting for people or hunting for clues. This leads to intense moments of tunnel vision, or occasions where missed information can lead to disaster. And that's now, after the latest Scorched Earth update, where visual fidelity has seen a pretty big upgrade, and an option has been added to raise the crosshair to the center of the screen, giving you more vertical space to keep visible. Subtle mechanics like this are key to driving the flow state because of one reason in particular, a concept called gaze behavior. In 1965, a Soviet psychologist called Alfred Lukyanovich Yarbus published a book called Eye Movements and Vision. In this book, he outlined a handful of key behaviors of the eye that reflect our cognitive processes. This would set the foundation for the study of gaze behavior, which is generally defined as the patterns and dynamics of eye movements, including how individuals visually explore their environment, focus on specific objects or areas, and shift their attention from one point to another. Now, while gaze behaviors have been studied by countless individuals much smarter than myself, modern research has, thankfully for us plebeians, been able to condense the concept of gaze behavior into several key aspects: fixations, saccades, smooth pursuit movements, and scan paths. These aspects of gaze behavior are all clearly reflected when we are in flow by the optimization of our rapid eye movements, our saccades, our effortlessness in aiming and honing in on a target, fixations, our ability to read and anticipate an opponent's movements with uncanny precision, smooth pursuit movements, and of course, completing all of these behaviors effortlessly and effectively through optimal scan paths. This behavior enables us to operate with minimal distractions, efficient information processing, complete control, and most importantly, undivided attention and concentration. But there is another critical aspect of gaze behavior. Researchers call it the gaze duration. My girlfriend calls it siege phase, but it's more commonly known as the quiet eye, that window between when we acquire our target and pull the trigger. The quiet eye is the final visual fixation on a specific location or object that occurs immediately before the execution of a critical action, Studies have found that highly skilled performers, like top athletes, have a longer gaze duration than their less skilled peers when it comes to executing tasks that require precision, like for instance, shooting a basketball. Researchers theorize that this behavior allows you to minimize distractions and focus on fine tuning your motor coordination to aid in more accurate decision making by giving your brain the necessary time required to process spatial and movement information. And what's even more exciting is that this quiet eye can be trained. This complete high-intensity focus enabled by the quiet eye is mirrored in the mastery demanded by Hunt during firefights, where landing your shots is of paramount importance. After all, as Joan Vickers concluded in 1990, when the game comes down to the wire, the quiet eye is the key difference between an athlete just being an athlete and an athlete being elite. However, even once you begin to master your quiet eye and see a clear improvement in your fighting, there's one last thing to cover, which is completely out of the control of you, your partner, and your kit.
'Cause the devil's on fire, the devil's in me.
In Hunt Showdown, the setting isn't just a backdrop, it's a hostile, target-rich environment and an active player in the experience. They are threats at all times. From the moment you step into the bayou or the new map Mammon's Gulch, they become antagonists, and they are mightily oppressive. The possibility that you can in any given moment be attacked by a corrupted raises the stakes, while certain variants of the corrupted can also inflict status effects like bleeding, which makes you take tick damage until bandaged, or poisoning, which prevents you from healing until it wears off, which can take quite a while. This is something you absolutely do not want in the middle of a battle with another player, and it means every step in Hunt is a risk, and you're in a constant state of alertness, never certain of where the next threat may come from, because of the way Hunt embeds its information in the world using color, movement patterns, and silhouettes. As a user, this means you can tell at a glance whether you're looking at a boss monster, grunt, or hunter. But this requires you to really pay attention and keeps your brain in a state of hypervigilance at all times. Constantly scanning your surroundings, managing resources, and making micro-adjustments to your tactics inevitably takes its toll on the mind, and that mental fatigue is a tool Hunt applies with jarring effectiveness in order to stand head and shoulders above almost any game on the market today. You're always vulnerable, and it's unlike anything else. It is one of the only games I've played that will under no circumstances let the player engage with a second screen. If you're the kind of player that often needs one for background noise or a video to keep your overactive mind occupied, this is 100% a game for you. It will not allow you to do that, and I personally challenge you to try without getting your ass kicked, because the environments of Hunt demand an all-encompassing focus that wears you down the longer you play, made so much more impactful by the game's use of sound, highlighted incredibly well by night maps. Night maps in Hunt don't just add difficulty, they make abundantly clear how the game should be played. With darkness comes sensory deprivation, and your eyes aren't your primary tool anymore. Where sound is an essential component of the game even during the day, in the dead of night, the lack of visual information forces the brain to elevate the sensitivity of your other senses, and every sound is amplified. The night is your teacher, your tutorial level. While the game was already putting sound on a footing at least equal to vision, you become hyper-reliant on it as well as your intuition at night, because of the creeping dread that daylight rarely brings, allowing unexpected sounds or eerie silences to surface through our subconscious into our conscious mind. On a very human level, it's why we're scared of the dark. See, in Hunt Showdown, sound isn't just an element of the atmosphere secondary to vision. It's for all intents and purposes another primary means of survival. Our senses, especially hearing, have evolved to detect danger long before we see it. And in the game, the sound of a broken branch can make your hair stand on edge. When you hear footsteps nearby, is it a player? Is it a monster? Or is it just your mind playing tricks on you? And why is it exciting? In simple terms, it's because silence can be your best weapon and your greatest enemy once broken. When everything is silent, you listen more intently, and every noise signals danger or opportunity. When we can't see the threat but we can hear it, our minds fill in the gaps, imagining worst-case scenarios, and this gives us time to prepare in advance for the multitude of scenarios that may come. This is a consequence of the psychology of space, a concept that explains things like how certain environments can evoke feelings of fear or anxiety, and it's built on principles of environmental psychology, such as proxemics, more commonly referred to as personal space, and environmental stressors. In applying design principles found within the psychology of space, Hunt teaches you that attunement and adaptability is the name of the game here. As the game increasingly demands your focus, you'll begin to immerse yourself fully in this world and adapt to it. You will become like water, sitting flush within the spaces it offers you for respite, because you'll be forced to, as they are very few and far in between.
Be formless, shapeless, like water. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Be water, my friend.
Soon enough, as you slow down and watch everything happening around you, you'll begin to learn that this offers a greater advantage than any selection of tools, weaponry, or character traits ever could. Because yes, while you are a guest here that's long overstayed their welcome, so is everyone else, and there is a way to make sure the hosts like you more. That's what makes Hunt truly special. The land can and will chase you along a path towards your prey, apathetically lending you a muddied, bloodied hand, provided you form your own pact of silence with it, find your quarry, and leave. In the end, what makes Hunt so compelling is that it isn't just about outsmarting your enemies. It's a dance between fear and courage, greed and caution. It challenges not just your skill, but your understanding of human nature. This is not just a game about hunting, it's about confronting our own limitations by putting ourselves under the psychological weight of sound and space, putting ourselves under the tension of our ability to prepare and perform with those around us. It's a game that forces us to make decisions which reveal something fundamental about who we are, that every choice we make matters, and that every loss we encounter teaches us resilience. That, in the end, on a very human level, survival is as much about mastering fear, fatigue, and doubt as it is about facing overwhelming odds and still emerging victorious.
I've been around, they say, but it's been 3 years and 2 days since I found her. Last song's playing.
But that's the Hunt Showdown experience. The gameplay is engaging, the style is unique, the soundtrack by the Port Sulphur Band, which by the way is made up entirely of developers on the team, absolutely slaps, and bar some UI issues that are plaguing the game's success, it does offer something quite special in today's market. Something that can stand apart from the competition on its own merits, aside from hype and promises. On a personal level, I absolutely loved playing this game. I just hope diving into the core user experience of it has been able to adequately demonstrate what it really brings to the table, and what any of you might find great about it. Thank you all for watching, and if this video taught you a little more about what makes your favorite game so compelling, drop a like. If it didn't, let me know what you'd like to see done differently, and of course, leave your thoughts in the comments below so we can have a chat, or at the least build some engagement and get more eyeballs on these videos. Next up, we've got Space Marine 2, which I am so pumped to play through you have no idea. I really enjoyed Helldivers 2, and it looks like it offers much of the same with more of a narrative focus. And with the popularity of Warhammer, especially in Europe, I'm thrilled to dive in. So with that said, see you again very soon, and until then, take care.